Imagine losing your pregnancy, trying to push through the workday to keep your mind busy, and then getting dragged into your boss's office because a coworker was timing your bathroom breaks with a stopwatch. Well, one woman just obliterated her office bully with a reality check so brutal, the entire workplace froze. We have a 26-year-old woman dealing with an absolute nightmare of a coworker named Mary. We all know a Mary. She is that one person in the office whose literal life mission is to tattle on people and get the rest of the staff in trouble. And on this particular Friday, the writer of our story was Mary's target. The writer gets back from her lunch break, and her boss immediately pulls her aside for a serious chat. Apparently, there had been a formal complaint filed about her excessive bathroom usage. Someone, clearly Mary, claimed that the writer was abandoning her desk and forcing the rest of the team to pick up her slack. Now, what exactly constitutes an excessive bathroom break in Mary's delusional mind? The writer took a grand total of 10 extra minutes in the 4 hours before lunch, and then took a 40-minute lunch instead of the standard 30. 20 extra minutes total. But here is the heartbreaking reality that Mary, the hallway monitor, did not know. The writer was 8 weeks pregnant and had started miscarrying on Tuesday. She had called in sick to work earlier in the week to deal with it. She had Thursday off since she was scheduled to work Saturday, but she decided to come into the office on Friday specifically to use work to distract herself instead of sitting at home wallowing in her grief. So she is sitting in this ambush meeting with her boss, bleeding and grieving, and she just gives up and explains the entire medical situation to end the conversation. The boss immediately backpedals, apologizes profusely to her, and offers her a couple of days off, but the writer insists she wants to be at work to distract herself. The meeting ends. The writer walks back to her desk, and there is Mary. Mary is sitting there looking extremely smug, clearly thinking she had successfully gotten her coworker in major trouble. And the writer is just flooded with anger. The sheer audacity of this woman to smile about this is just too much. So the writer walks right up to Mary and drops a nuclear bomb. She tells her she is sorry if Mary was so distracted by her being away from her desk for 20 minutes, but since she was miscarrying, she figured it was fine. Mary's smug smile vanishes instantly. She looks absolutely shocked but she does not speak or even look at the writer for the rest of the entire day. Mary's soul essentially leaves her body. But the absolute worst part happens after work. Another coworker, someone the writer thought she was actually friendly with, pulls her aside. And this so-called friend has the nerve to say that while the writer was technically right and Mary was completely out of line, the writer should not have said anything at all, knowing it would create an uncomfortable work environment. The writer is stunned. She does not feel like she did anything wrong, believing that if Mary wants to micromanage everything, she should expect uncomfortable situations to arise. But she also gets that Mary is not the only coworker this gets awkward for, and she does not want to make things hard for the coworkers she actually gets along with. So she is left wondering if she is the a-hole for telling Mary she was miscarrying and making the office uncomfortable. There is a staggering level of toxicity to unpack here. First, did the writer cross a professional line by dropping severe medical trauma on her coworker? Absolutely not. When you back a wounded person into a corner, you cannot act shocked when they defend themselves. The writer was not oversharing for attention. She was backed into a wall by a malicious coworker who was actively trying to jeopardize her employment over 20 minutes. Let's really look at Mary. What kind of deeply unfulfilled, miserable human being sits at a desk tracking a grown woman's bathroom habits? This is middle school mean girl behavior, dragging its heavy feet into the corporate world. People like Mary do not actually care about company productivity or picking up the slack. If you have the free time to monitor someone else's bladder, you clearly do not have enough actual work to do yourself. Mary is addicted to the tiny, pathetic rush of authority she gets from weaponizing management against her peers. It is a desperate grab for control from someone who likely has zero control over anything else in her life. She is a corporate parasite, and the manager in this situation is staggeringly incompetent. A good manager does not entertain a peer-to-peer complaint about a 20-minute discrepancy without verifying the workload first. The boss should have looked Mary dead in the eye and asked how she had the bandwidth to run a stopwatch on her colleague. By validating Mary's complaint and bringing the writer into the office, the boss empowered the office bully and forced an employee to disclose an incredibly raw, private medical trauma just to defend her job. That is the exact definition of a hostile work environment. This whole disaster exposes a massive, glaring flaw in how society treats women's health, bodies, and grief. There's this unspoken, incredibly damaging rule that miscarriages are dirty little secrets, that they are taboo. We are conditioned to hide the physical and emotional agony of losing a pregnancy because the mere mention of it might make someone else feel a little awkward. Think about the sheer insanity of that expectation. A woman is going through one of the most physically painful and emotionally devastating experiences a human being can endure. And society's primary concern is that she does not ruin the vibe at the water cooler. The expectation for women to suffer in silence is so deeply ingrained that even her quote unquote friendly coworker prioritized the office aesthetic over basic human empathy. It is weaponized professionalism. The idea of keeping the peace is almost always used as a tool to silence the victim while protecting the instigator. Why is Mary's comfort more important than the writer's dignity? Why does the burden of maintaining a pleasant work environment fall on the woman who is actively bleeding and grieving rather than the busybody who started the fire in the first place? When we demand that people shrink themselves and hide their struggles to keep things comfortable, we enforce a culture of toxic positivity that isolates people when they need support the most. Miscarriages happen. They happen in offices, in grocery stores, and on buses. They are a devastating reality of life, and demanding that women sweep that reality under the rug to spare a bully's feelings is completely absurd. When you dig into the online reaction, it is a complete bloodbath directed straight at Mary and the cowardly friend. One person brought up the glaring double standard, asking why it is suddenly a crime for the writer to defend herself when Mary was the one creating the uncomfortable work environment by spending her time monitoring bathroom breaks. The discomfort started the exact second Mary walked into the manager's office with her imaginary clipboard. Another user pointed out that questioning employees about their bathroom use is a remarkably stupid way for a company to end up with a massive legal complaint against them. What if the writer had an irritable bowel condition or was recovering from food poisoning? Offices should not have bathroom policies because we are adults, not grade schoolers needing a hall pass. Tracking bodily functions is a massive human resources violation waiting to happen. People shared their own insane office bathroom stories, with one guy recalling a coworker who soiled himself, went home to change, and came back with two backup pairs of underwear for his locker, prompting everyone else to do the same out of sheer paranoia. It highlights how humiliating and degrading it is when companies police basic human needs. But the absolute most infuriating part of this story is the supposedly friendly coworker. As one commenter violently put it, it is absolutely mind-blowing that a coworker would tell a woman who is actively bleeding through a miscarriage that she should have prioritized Mary's comfort. Let that sink in. Your body is going through a trauma, but please make sure the office snitch does not feel bad about trying to get you fired. Another user absolutely nailed the harsh reality of the situation, stating that if every woman decided to stay quiet just to avoid making things uncomfortable for others, women would still be stuck as incubators without the right to vote. You cannot coddle the fragile sensibilities of bullies and expect things to change. Mary chose to play a stupid game, and she won a horrific, soul-crushing prize. She deserves to sit in that discomfort. She deserves to feel the crushing weight of her own nasty behavior. People online were not holding back on Mary's psychological profile either. One incredibly perceptive user noted that Mary is likely embarrassed right now, but people like her never take true accountability. In a day or two, she will probably convince herself that the writer was in the wrong for bringing personal drama into the workplace, completely ignoring the fact that Mary forced the issue. Mary is a compulsory tattletale who craves praise at the cost of destroying others, and she is entirely unlikely to learn a genuine lesson from this. The cultural difference in how this was handled is also wild. One reader from Canada pointed out that in any normal, healthy office setting, if a coworker suffered a miscarriage, the entire staff would rally around them, offering overwhelming support and asking if they needed anything. The fact that the writer's office culture demands silence and punishes the victim reveals a deeply broken system. Another person acting as manager weighed in with the only correct perspective, saying that if they had an employee like Mary, their very first question would be how she has time for all of this tattling when she is supposed to be working. If Mary has enough free time to track someone's trips to the toilet, she desperately needs more assignments. A manager's job is to care about deadlines and work quality, not micromanage human bodily functions. If Mary had tried this nonsense with a competent boss, she would have been told to mind her own business immediately. The final verdict here is incredibly clear. The writer is absolutely not the a-hole, not even by a fraction of a percent. She survived an unthinkable, agonizing loss and stood up to a corporate ghoul who tried to use her vulnerability as a weapon. But the war in that office is far from over, because Mary and this backstabbing, peacekeeping friend are still sitting at their desks. The writer needs to bypass her weak, spineless manager entirely and march straight into the human resources department. It is time to establish a relentless paper trail. She needs to file a formal complaint for a hostile work environment and medical harassment. She should send an email that states exactly what happened. Open quote, I am writing to formally report an ongoing pattern of harassment from my coworker, Mary. On Friday, Mary actively monitored my bathroom usage and falsely reported me to management for slacking off. This unwarranted surveillance forced me to disclose a severe ongoing medical emergency, a miscarriage, to my supervisor simply to protect my employment status. Mary's behavior is creating a deeply toxic, discriminatory, and hostile work environment, and I expect this pattern of unauthorized monitoring to be addressed immediately. Close quote. Send that directly to the head of the department and carbon copy a personal email address for backup. That forces the company to put Mary on a permanent leash because right now she is a walking lawsuit that could cost the business thousands. As for that other coworker who told the writer to stay quiet, cut her off instantly. You do not need friends who expect you to swallow glass just so the office does not have to hear the crunch. When people show you that they value a quiet room over your actual well-being, you believe them the first time. The writer has every right to take up space, to grieve, and to force the people who wronged her to look at the ugly reality of their actions. I want to know what you all think about this disaster. Did the writer go too far by dropping the miscarriage bomb to wipe that smug look off Mary's face? Or did Mary get exactly the brutal reality check she deserved? Let me know your absolute worst, most unhinged office tattletale stories down in the comments. And if you want more daily drama that makes your own coworkers look perfectly sane, hit that subscribe button. Imagine finding out your boyfriend's ex just moved back to town and you catch him using a secret, highly intimate pet name that literally nobody else uses. And when you confront him, he calls you crazy and insecure. Well, today we are diving into a story where a guy accidentally exposed his own emotional cheating to the entire internet, and the comment section turned his life into a literal soap opera. We have a 29-year-old guy who has found himself in massive trouble with his current girlfriend, who is also 29. They have been dating for about 8 months, which is right around that time when the honeymoon phase starts to fade and you start seeing the real red flags. But to understand the drama, we have to rewind to his previous relationship. For years, the writer was dating a guy who is now 33 years old. According to the writer, everyone who knows this ex-boyfriend calls him either by his initials, JT, or by his last name. But our writer, he is special. When they first met, the ex introduced himself by his actual first name, Jude, and so that is what the writer has always called him. Now, 2 years ago, this massive romance came to a screeching halt, but not because they fell out of love. Jude got a massive promotion at his company that required a ton of traveling. The Ryder claims he loved him too much to let him turn down such an incredible opportunity. And since the writer is a massive homebody who needs his partner at home with him, they tried long distance, realized it was totally unsustainable, and broke up. Fast forward to today. The writer has been with his new girlfriend for 8 months, and suddenly Jude transfers positions within his company again. He is no longer traveling. He is back in their city for the vast majority of the time. And since their breakup was purely a logistical issue and they never ended on bad terms, they are still friends. Now, the writer claims his new girlfriend always said she was perfectly fine with him remaining friends with his ex, but everything blew up after a recent group outing. The writer, the girlfriend, Jude, and some other friends all went out together. After the hangout, the girlfriend pulled the writer aside and asked a very pointed question. She wanted to know why he calls his ex by a completely different name than every single other person in the friend group. What started as a simple question rapidly spiraled into a multi-day explosive argument. The girlfriend firmly claimed that calling his ex by his first name when literally no one else on the planet does is way too intimate. She told him it is a relationship thing, an exclusive bond, and that if they are truly just friends now, he needs to start treating him like a normal friend and call him what everyone else calls him. Instead of reassuring her, the writer doubled down. He told his girlfriend she was being ridiculous and unbelievably insecure, arguing that it is literally just the guy's legal name, not some cute term of endearment. He marched onto the internet, fully expecting people to validate him and call his girlfriend a toxic, controlling mess. But when you actually pause and look at the exact words this guy used to write his story, the entire innocent act falls apart in spectacular fashion. He tells us he broke up with his ex 2 years ago, but look at the phrasing he uses in his own explanation. He wrote, "I love him, and I definitely didn't want him turning down an opportunity." Notice the tense there. He did not say, "I loved him." He said, "I love him." Present tense. Right now. Today. He openly admits to being in love with his ex-boyfriend while actively dating a woman for 8 months. And let's look at the actual anatomy of their breakup. They did not split up because of a betrayal or a loss of attraction or incompatible life goals. They broke up because the ex had to get on an airplane too often. That was the only barrier keeping them apart. Now, that barrier has been completely removed. Jude is back in town, the distance is gone, and the writer is parading him around in front of his new girlfriend while using a special exclusive name that only he is allowed to use. This brings us to a massively toxic dynamic that happens all the time in modern dating, which is the absolute myth of the cool girlfriend. Society puts so much pressure on women to be completely unbothered by everything. If you question your partner's relationship with an ex, you are instantly labeled as crazy, toxic, controlling, or insecure. So women swallow their entirely valid anxiety. They force a smile and say, "Of course, I'm fine with you being best friends with your ex." But what is happening here is not irrational insecurity. It is purely rational insecurity. Her body is sounding a blaring alarm because she is standing in a room watching her boyfriend lock eyes with the supposed love of his life. She is picking up on the lingering glances, the inside jokes, the unspoken history, and the sheer intimacy of him using a name that is completely off limits to the rest of the world. But because she does not want to sound like a psycho, she cannot just scream that he is still in love with the guy. Instead, her anxiety latches on to the one tangible, undeniable piece of evidence she can vocalize without sounding insane: the name. It was never about the syllables in the word Jude. It is about the fact that she knows deep down in her bones that she is a temporary placeholder. She is the understudy who got called to the stage only because the lead actor had to catch a flight, and now the lead actor has returned to reclaim his spot. Weaponizing therapy terms like insecure to gaslight a woman who accurately senses that you are emotionally cheating on her is an unbelievably cruel manipulation tactic, and the internet absolutely did not let him get away with it. Um, the comment section turned into a brutal courtroom, immediately ripping his narrative to shreds. One user completely shut down his innocent routine, pointing out that he literally used present tense to describe his feelings, telling him that his girlfriend is not insecure, she is just highly observant. Another detective in the comments exposed an incredibly damning piece of evidence. Um, the writer had apparently been replying to comments and accidentally referred to Jude as his partner before quickly editing the comment to cover his tracks. But the internet never forgets. That same user revealed that the writer actually defended using the name Jude by claiming that calling someone by their initials is weird when you are in bed together. Let that sink in. He is actively fighting with his current real life girlfriend, and his primary defense is that he cannot change the nickname because he is still actively imagining what it sounds like to speak to his ex in the bedroom. The level of disrespect is absolutely staggering. You cannot date a woman while simultaneously keeping a bedroom specific nickname locked and loaded for your ex boyfriend. The absolute best part of this entire disaster, though, is that the romantic tension between the writer and his ex was so incredibly obvious that one commenter literally wrote a multi season soap opera script right there in the comment section. It was completely unhinged and pure cinematic gold. The commenter painted this vivid picture of a holiday reunion where the writer is out shopping for coffee while his sweet, unsuspecting girlfriend is at home wrapping presents. He is standing in line at the cafe, and suddenly there is Jude wearing that scarf. A classic romantic song starts playing in the background. The writer panics and flees to the cafe bathroom to wash his face, but Jude follows him in and locks the door. The commenter described them sharing this desperate, world ending kiss, with Jude staring deeply into the writer's tear filled eyes, begging him to stop lying to himself about his current relationship. But the soap opera did not stop there. The story continues with the disheveled writer returning to his apartment, ready to confess his infidelity, only for his girlfriend to eagerly force him to open a gift box on the kitchen counter. He opens it, and sitting right there is a positive pregnancy test. She excitedly reminds him of a crazy night in Ibiza where she forgot her birth control, trapping him in this agonizing dilemma, while Jude sits alone outside the cafe, waiting for a text message that is never going to come. This fanfiction absolutely sent the rest of the commenters into a frenzy. People were replying saying they were completely invested, demanding a second season, and joking about greenlighting a television show. Another person added a twist, suggesting the girlfriend completely faked the pregnancy by buying a positive test from a neighbor just to trap him. When an entire community of strangers reads your request for advice and immediately starts writing steamy fan fiction about you and your ex, you are absolutely not hiding your feelings as well as you think you are. But amidst all the wild jokes and soap opera scripts, the brutal reality of the situation came crashing down. Someone brought up the legendary Iranian yogurt concept from Reddit history, reminding everyone that the fight is never actually about the yogurt, and in this case, it is absolutely not about the name Jude. It is about the fact that the girlfriend feels the massive, heavy presence of a ghost in her relationship. There were a few naive people trying to defend the writer, arguing that the girlfriend explicitly said she was fine with him being friends with his ex, so she's just going back on her word and acting toxic. But the rebuttal to that was absolutely savage. A commenter pointed out that being fine with a theoretical ex who lives halfway across the country is completely different from being fine with an ex who suddenly sitting at your table, making eye contact with your boyfriend, and sharing an exclusive level of intimacy that makes you feel like a third wheel in your own relationship. When you agree to your partner being friends with an ex, the implicit agreement is that the romantic feelings are completely dead and buried. The second the writer admitted that he still loves Jude, the entire friendship became a massive violation of boundaries. You do not get to keep your ex on standby just in case the logistics suddenly work out in your favor. Ultimately, the writer is completely and utterly in the wrong. He is the villain of his own story. He is keeping an incredible woman completely tied down in a relationship where she is unknowingly competing in a race she has already lost. He calls her unbelievably insecure, but she is the only person in this entire triangle who is actually seeing reality clearly. She knows he is waiting for the perfect moment to jump ship, and he is just angry that she is smart enough to catch on to his game before he was ready to make his move. If he had even a single shred of respect for this woman, he would stop dragging out her misery, stop blaming her for having completely valid human emotions, and finally set her free. So, here is the exact word for word text message he needs to send to his girlfriend right now to end this charade. Hey, I owe you a massive apology. You were right to be upset about Jude, and calling you insecure was a cruel way for me to deflect from my own guilt. The truth is, I am still entirely in love with him, and I have been keeping you around as a comfortable distraction while I figure out my own mess. You deserve a partner who chooses you first every single day without hesitation or lingering ghosts. I am so sorry for wasting your time, but I am ending this right now so you can go find the absolute security you deserve. That is the only honorable way out of this disaster. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Have you ever had to deal with a partner who was secretly harboring a massive obsession with an ex? Or have you ever been forced to pretend you were the cool girlfriend while red flags were flying everywhere? Drop your absolute worst dating horror stories below. And if you want more daily drama that proves your own love life is actually going great, hit that subscribe button. What if someone hands you a massive, highly sensitive secret? You lock it in the absolute vault, and the very next day, your own partner bursts through the door to gossip about it, and then viciously blames you when his entire family burns to the ground. Well, buckle up, because today we are tearing apart a story where a woman accidentally exposed her in laws as a pack of backstabbing gossips, and the comment section delivered an absolute masterclass on surviving toxic families. Our writer's sister in law happens to hold a prominent political office in their local municipality. During a totally private conversation, this sister in law drops a strictly confidential piece of information on the writer, establishing a crystal clear boundary. She cannot tell a single soul, not even her own partner, who is the sister in law's brother. Now, this isn't some highly illegal, oath breaking government leak. It is just a strategic career move, like announcing a bid for county council, that simply needs a strict 4-day embargo before it officially goes public to the community. The sister in law openly admits she also trusted her mother, our writer's mother in law, with the exact same secret under the exact same conditions. The writer makes a solemn promise and keeps her mouth entirely shut. But the very next day, her partner saunters in and excitedly announces that he has a massive secret to share. As he keeps talking, the writer feels the floor drop out from under her because he is eagerly spilling the exact same political secret she was sworn to protect. She immediately cuts him off, tells him she already knows, and demands to know exactly who leaked the information. Without missing a single beat, he throws his own mother straight under the bus. When the sister-in-law drops by a few hours later, the writer does the only loyal thing possible. She warns her that her mother had already passed the secret on. This warning triggers an absolutely catastrophic family meltdown. The sister-in-law aggressively confronts her mother, and the mother-in-law responds with pure, unhinged gaslighting. First, she flat out lies and claims she never said a word. Then, she desperately tries to pin the blame on her own husband, the father-in-law, who wasn't even supposed to know the secret in the first place. When that entirely falls apart, she points a vicious finger right at our writer, accusing her of being the real leak. But the absolute most mind-blowing part of this entire disaster is the partner's reaction. He violently turns on the writer, loudly blaming her for the entire family conflict simply because she refused to keep her mouth shut and cover up his mother's betrayal. He genuinely believes his partner is the ultimate a-hole for running to the original source. Let's completely tear apart the psychology of this partner for a second. Why on earth would he think his reaction is remotely acceptable? He literally walked into the house, opened his mouth to spread highly confidential gossip he wasn't supposed to know, and then had the sheer audacity to scream at his wife for breaking his trust. He is operating under a deeply distorted logic where the main currency of love in his family is shared betrayal. He thinks a marriage means unconditionally covering for his mother's pathological lies. And maybe you are sitting there wondering if the writer ran to the sister-in-law just to aggressively stir the pot. But look at the corner she was backed into. If the writer had kept completely quiet and the sister-in-law eventually found out the secret was spreading, the mother-in-law was absolutely primed and ready to frame the writer for the entire leak. By stepping up and telling the truth immediately, the writer flawlessly protected herself from being the permanent family scapegoat. This completely exposes the universal, exhausting reality of the don't rock the boat family dynamic. In highly toxic systems, you always have one person, in this case, the mother-in-law, who constantly rocks the boat by crossing boundaries, lying, and creating total chaos. Instead of kicking the boat rocker out, the entire family spends their lives aggressively throwing their weight to the other side of the boat just to keep it from capsizing. The partner has been conditioned since birth to stabilize his mother's chaos. He expects his wife to immediately grab an oar and start paddling to protect the mother's fragile ego. When the writer simply stands up and points out that the mother is actively drilling holes in the hull, the family doesn't attack the mother. They violently attack the writer. They are completely furious that she possesses the structural integrity that they entirely lack. When you bring this disaster to the Reddit courtroom, the debate turns into an absolute bloodbath. A few people came in incredibly hot trying to pin the ultimate blame right on the sister-in-law. They argued that if she is an elected official holding public office, she is a massive unethical hypocrite for spreading confidential municipality information to her mother in the first place. They claimed she had absolutely zero business being in a position of power if her lips are this dangerously loose. But that hot take gets completely obliterated by a savage reality check. A commenter brilliantly pointed out that this wasn't classified government intelligence, it was her own personal, strategic career news. It makes perfect sense that she would want to discuss her own massive life decisions with her family before going public. And then the ultimate plot twist drops right in the comments section. The writer reveals that the sister-in-law actually confessed to feeding this specific low-stakes secret to her mother as a highly calculated loyalty test. She knew her mother was a massive liability and wanted to see if she could trust her before ever handing over anything truly sensitive. It was an absolute sting operation, and the mother-in-law blindly walked right into the tripwire. The comments section completely united to fiercely defend the writer. One user perfectly quoted Benjamin Franklin, reminding everyone that 3 people can only keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. Another commenter absolutely dismantled the partner, pointing out the sheer irony of him screaming about loyalty when he couldn't even wait to take his coat off before spilling a secret he wasn't supposed to know. As one brilliant response summed it up, the sister-in-law is a blabbermouth, the mother-in-law is a blabbermouth, and the husband is a blabbermouth. The writer is literally the only airtight vault in the entire zip code, and the family is treating her like a criminal for it. The chilling update to this story proves exactly why this family is broken beyond repair. The aftermath of this massive explosion was simply nothing, complete business as usual. The family went right back to aggressively smiling, making shallow small talk, and pretending everything was absolutely perfect. In toxic systems, nothing ever gets resolved. It just gets violently swept under the rug until it is inevitably weaponized in the next argument. The writer fully admits that her partner has always placed his loyalty to her dead last, whether it comes to keeping promises, defending her honor, or even remaining faithful. She has always been a distant second place to his mother's endless demands. The sister-in-law is now officially planning to draw hard boundaries and completely distance herself from this circus of a family. And hilariously, the writer already knows exactly who the mother-in-law will blame for driving her away. The final verdict here is entirely indisputable. The writer is absolutely not the a-hole. She survived a catastrophic test of character while completely surrounded by emotional toddlers. Her partner, however, is a massive walking red flag. He essentially demanded that his partner silently absorb the immense collateral damage of his mother's pathological lying just to keep his own pathetic life comfortable. If the writer wants to shut this ridiculous situation down permanently, she needs to stop engaging in endless, draining verbal fights with people who refuse to live in reality. She needs to send one devastating, entirely factual text message to her partner to establish a permanent paper trail. She should copy and paste this exactly. I am completely done being the designated punching bag for your family's inability to keep their mouths shut. You were trusted with absolutely zero information, yet you actively chose to eagerly spread gossip. Your mother actively chose to break a promise to her own daughter and then desperately tried to frame me for it. I did not cause this conflict. I simply refuse to help you. You quietly cover up your mother's toxic behavior. Do not ever speak to me about loyalty again until you finally figure out how to stand up to your mother. Because right now, you are aggressively pointing the finger at the only person in this entire house who actually knows how to keep a promise. That text is an impenetrable titanium wall. It gives him absolutely zero room to manipulate the timeline. Now I want to hear from all of you. Who is the one person in your family that you would never, ever trust with a secret? Have you ever had to deal with a partner who demanded you cover up their family's toxic behavior just to keep the peace? Drop your absolute worst, most unhinged in law horror stories down in the comments below. And hey, if you want to help this channel rapidly hit our massive subscriber goals so we can keep bringing you the absolute craziest Reddit drama on the internet, make sure you smash that subscribe button right now.